Good evening, everybody.
Hello, hello, everyone out there in Internet Radio Land.
Yes, welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder.
And if you are returning, welcome back. If you're new, welcome. Real quick, before I get into talking about what we do, my 1 week from tonight, uh, I am going to be launching the Kickstarter campaign for my first comic book, Angels Awakening. So if you missed out on that book, on the other campaigns, and or maybe you like Kickstarter better than you like Indiegogo, that will be available to you. So
Yep, it is an entirely different audience. So I can
yeah,
think of, I'm more an Indiegogo guy, and I've bought like one Kickstarter comic since I really started doing crowdfunding on comics. So it makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. So so yeah, be sure to tune in. Of course, tune in every week, but definitely want to
Yes.
be tuning in next week.
Tune
Um,
in, in fact.
yes. But anyway, so what we do here is we start with our media of the week, and this is something that we've been watching or consuming for the last week. Sometimes we watch the same thing. Sometimes we'll pick something for the other one to watch, and or sometimes we just watch something completely different than the other one, and we have absolutely no idea what the other one's talking about.
Yes. This week we converged on Smokey and the Bandit,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Smoking the Bandit.
which for once I can say this phrase, Daniel had never seen all the way through.
No, I had never seen it all the way through. Just seen parts of it.
This was like my third time through, so that was like, ha! I finally have a classic movie up on you.
Yes, yes. And of course, then after that, we get into box office and then do our topics. So
Yes.
yeah, so not to bury the lead now. Yeah, I had never seen this movie all the way through. I'd seen parts of it on TV, when it would
Hmm.
pop up every now and then, but never watched it from beginning to end. And it's I can see why people enjoyed this movie when it came out back in 1977. And we actually looked up the box office numbers before the show, and it did very well.
$4 million budget, 126 million domestic haul, and which inflation adjusted is like over half a billion. So
Yeah,
it, this movie was a big deal, and it's almost it's hard to realize how big of a deal it is. Yeah,
yeah,
like this was I don't know if it started the trucker craze of the 70s, but it definitely poured fuel on that fire.
yeah, yeah, and also it boosted the sales of Trans Ams and CB radios.
Yes. Uh, so Smokey and the Bandit is the story of Burt Reynolds' character, the titular Smokey
Bandit.
Bandit. God dang it. I had one job, DB. You had one job.
That's
Anyway,
all
the
right.
titular bandit, Smokey, is our police chief over there. And this actually is, this movie is a very interesting little piece of history because
Mhm.
at the time, you couldn't sell Coors beer west of the Mississippi.
Right, because and not for the reasons they mentioned in the movie. The reason you couldn't get Coors east of Texas was because of the way the beer was made,
Yep.
and if they went past a certain point, it would spoil.
Right. Because like the whole point of Coors and why it was desirable was because it didn't have any preservatives in it.
Right.
And so at the time, it was all made in Colorado, so you couldn't, if you took it out too far in the trucks at the time, which weren't refrigerated,
Hmm.
you would have a bad batch of Coors.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
nowadays, this is solved by having more breweries around the country and having refrigerated trucks and train cars.
Right. Yeah. And but in the movie, it's illegal to sell Coors east of Texas, and it's considered bootlegging.
How?
And
So this makes our So this makes for our ticking clock here as Bandit and his good buddy the Snowman have
Hmm.
to get a truckload of Coors to Georgia
Right. Yeah, they got to go from yeah, they start in Atlanta and they have to go to Texarkana and then back in 28 hours.
because they're thirsty in Atlanta, so we're going to Texarkana.
Yeah.
The song tells you the plot.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, then of course there isn't much plot with this movie, and that's perfectly fine.
Yes, this movie is a series of character scenes and action stunts.
Yeah.
It- Uh,
And
so,
yeah.
now, of course, the complication that they run into. So, oh yeah, so we should mention that Bandit is basically he's driving that Trans Am on their cover here,
Yeah.
and his job is basically to smoke out police officers or traffic cops so that
Hmm.
their truck can just blaze on through, ignoring the speed limit.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, and of course the well, yeah, the complication is the fact that they Bandit, Burt Reynolds, he has to stop in the middle of the road because he runs into Sally Field, who's a runaway bride,
Yep.
and of course she's running away because she was supposed to marry the sheriff, the police chief's son. Uh, of course, the police chief is of course played by the legendary Jackie Gleason.
Who is the highlight of this movie, in my
Oh
opinion?
yes, yes he is, and of course, apparently from what I read, they created the character of his son Junior because
Hmm.
he needed somebody to play off of.
Uh, which explains, he's very quiet through most of the movie.
Yes, yeah, and but yeah, yeah, there are a lot of great, yeah. There's so many funny scenes in this movie that they probably couldn't do today, or they might be able to do it.
Uh, I feel like this one is tame enough that you could get away with it. You just
Yeah,
I know the one you're talking about though,
yeah,
where
yeah,
he's talking. So okay, so you might go, wait a second. He's a sheriff and he's chasing down this car. Doesn't he lose jurisdiction as soon as he leaves Texas? Yes, yes, he does.
yeah,
So he keeps getting into some sort of conflict with the local sheriffs as he goes along too.
yeah.
And one time, like he's talking with a black sheriff, and when he runs into him, boy, get me the sheriff. I am the sheriff. Oh, my apologies. On the phone, you sounded taller. And walks away like, what is this world coming to? Like that's the most out there joke. And even then, I feel like you could possibly do that today because the joke isn't like, haha, isn't it funny that he's racist? It's wow, this asshole's racist.
Yeah. And yeah, and of course there's his and his great use of the phrase "some bitch."
I even found uh, I even was it, he in one scene he orders a Diablo sandwich, and I even went looking
Yeah,
for like what is a Diablo sandwich, and there is like no defined definition of what a Diablo sandwich is.
yeah,
So you just have people online trying their version of it. Like,
yeah. I think the best description for it is a spicy sloppy Joe,
you know,
basically. Yeah,
which I
and
found the recipe. I will probably make it for myself at some point, but
yeah. But yeah, that was a funny scene too, where he's in the diner with Bandit, and of course he doesn't recognize Bandit's voice.
yeah, uh, man, they should totally sue the makers of Die Hard. Totally ripped off that whole idea from them.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, this movie, it's a lot of fun. It's funny, and I will say too, like the the problem a lot of comedies like this kind of fall into is that they tend to get really zany and wacky during the climax.
Hmm.
And this movie the climax is a little zany and wacky, but not over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to the next movie. I decided I signed into Netflix and said, "Oh, you should try watching Smokey and the Bandit 2." And it's like, okay, why not? I'll tell you why not right now. So we were talking about things being zany and wacky.
Hmm.
Um, the people who had hired them in the first movie are running for governor. I should say the father is, and his son is helping him out.
Okay.
The opening scene is his rival, who they found some like World War II bombers or something, and they bombed his one of his campaign events with literal mounds of bullshit.
Oh God.
And he
Jeez.
retaliated with the same scheme with I'm not sure what that orange powder was. Maybe I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Um, and so the governor says, who's a Republican, says, I would endorse a Dallas cheerleader before either of you chuckleheads. And so the guy gets the idea that, you know, the so the plot of the movie is that he has to hire Smokey and the Bandit again. God damn, why do I keep doing this?
I don't know.
Snowman and the Bandit again
Yeah.
to uh, to get a elephant from Florida back to Texas in time for the GOP convention.
Oh jeez.
So like the wackiness levels are already at critical levels. But I thought, okay,
Yeah.
I mean, and Frog there, Sally Fields had left him. I was going to be marrying Smokey's kid again? Question mark.
Oh.
But I hit the and Bandit had fallen into the gutter and was just like a alcoholic mess. So
Oh.
very Jake Skywalker.
Oh jeez.
And I gave up partway through the first scene with Jackie Gleason because I said, okay, his character made that last movie, and his
Hmm.
first scene wasn't terribly funny.
Oh.
Uh, Now I hope that that's one of those things. And they also even had another song by the same group that was explaining this new plot.
Oh
You know,
jeez.
so they basically made the same movie again. This is one of those. Hey, strike while the iron's hot. Well, the actors get a bigger payday because now we know it's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, good for everybody for getting to do some work and having some fun. But it's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I completely understand why they would do a sequel, given that this movie made so much money.
yes,
I mean, it was the second highest grossing movie in 1977 behind Star Wars. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
that's yeah,
uh, and okay. So if we look at their trajectory, the second one made about half as much as the first one, which is,
mhm,
but it had like I said, the first one was like a classic slow roll. Opening
yeah,
weekend 1.7 million.
mm,
So that's like 100 times
yeah,
legs there, which is really impressive.
yeah,
The second
and
one opened big and kind of made half as much as the previous one, and
yeah,
then they made a third one for some reason long after the CB radio phase was dead, and it yeah
yeah,
it
yeah,
its opening weekend was suspiciously identical to the first one down to
yeah.
the dollar according to the numbers 1.728060, but its worldwide box office was like 7 million.
Oof.
So that was Burt Reynolds even in this?
Oh God.
Now I'm curious. I have to imagine he got out of it
Yeah, I think I don't think he was in that. I
by
know.
by
I
1983.
Well, I know. I mean, I don't even get. Jackie. Well, was Jackie Gleason even alive when they did the third
Let's
movie?
find out. To
Or-
Wikipedia, the found he yep okay Jackie Gleason was in it.
Wow.
However, I'm noticing a lack of the name Burt Reynolds because by 1983, Burt Reynolds was too big of a star for this crap.
Yeah.
So I guess our overall review is just watch the first one.
Yeah, just watch the first one. Yeah.
Although,
Yeah, it's like we said, it's on Netflix. So I don't know if it's on anywhere else, but I mean, you might catch it on TV every now and then because I know sometimes they might show it on TV, but I don't. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, Although looking at this trailer here, it's kind of a shame that it's not very good because the still image on the trailer is Sheriff Buford T. Justice doing his take on Patton's speech.
Oh, jeez.
So
Uh,
anyway,
yeah.
sometimes things are best left in the past, which may come up in a minute. But let's get on
Yeah. Yeah.
to our weekly box office talk.
Yes.
So as has been our habit when the winner of the weekend is interesting,
Yeah.
we'll put a pin in that for the moment.
Yes.
So if we take a look at the top 10, Avatar and Puss in Boots and Ant-Man are all out of it.
Yep.
I hadn't noticed that Ant-Man had fallen down to like number 16 behind
60.
Jesus Revolution.
Ooh. Yeesh.
And Jesus Revolution is in more theaters
Wow.
at this point. Interesting.
Mm.
I guess for last weekend it made sense to keep it around because they actually had a fair number of faith-based movies for the Easter season this year. They had His
Oh.
Only Son, which is that story of Abraham and Isaac that we were talking about last week.
Right.
There was another one I thought I saw in there. Ba, 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 ba. Nope, not seeing it.
Yeah.
But regardless, it seems to be a good time of year for that.
Yeah.
Um, unfortunately, the worthy but badly marketed and promoted
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves fell from first to fourth place with a 63% drop, which is never good.
No.
Uh,
Yeah, I think that I think we were saying last week that movie has the potential to be a cult classic.
yeah, that's one people might discover on streaming more than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Um, so a surprising bit of counter programming against Super Mario, though, is the movie Air from Amazon Studios.
Hmm.
The story of the Air Jordan or the origins of Air Jordan,
Ah. Okay. Oh, is
which
that the Ben Affleck Matt Damon movie?
yep,
Okay.
came in at 14 million
Hmm.
for the weekend, which I don't think they had a budget listed when I looked for that. Well, looked at it. Let's find out if yeah, they didn't really,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
still, it's part of the ongoing thing where it looks like the streaming giants are kind of going, there's money to be made by putting it in the theaters first.
Yeah.
Um, rounding out the top 10, as bad as Dungeons and Dragons is doing, it made more money in 2 weeks than Shazam: Fury of the God did in 4.
Ooh.
Things
Man.
not
Yeah.
looking good for Blue Beetle or Aquaman 2 at this rate.
Yeah.
And whatever that third DC movie that I know exists. Oh, Flash. We'll
Yeah.
see how things look for Flash. That'll,
Yeah. The Flash, I think will probably do okay.
yeah. Just having
I
Michael Keaton Batman is going to sell some tickets.
yeah, yeah. Although it probably won't do as well as they were hoping it would.
I mean, that movie, with all the reshoots they've done and all of the delays and everything, there's not a universe where this makes like the $1 billion or whatever it would have to break even.
No, no, no.
Which is again malfortunate, but yeah, it's kind of what happens when you don't have when you go into things without a plan, which is
Y-
also for some foreshadowing for later on in the podcast.
yes.
Let's see here. Creed 3 is kind of holding in there. We haven't really talked much about Creed 3 recently. Uh,
Yeah.
so what I'm curious is how it ended up actually stacking up against Creed 2. Because it had a big opening weekend and it was the biggest of the series. But if you like factored in like inflation, it was about the same number of tickets.
Yeah.
Um,
It's,
versus Creed 2. Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's
It's
well over it,
yeah.
but part of that could just be ticket inflation since what, 2018?
Uh, Creed 2 was
That was a
2018.
5-year gap, huh?
Yeah, I think COVID might have delayed it.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, just looking at it, it seems likely that they just kept their audience, which
Yeah.
is not a bad thing.
No. Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
also more foreshadowing for later in the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I haven't. Well, of course, I haven't seen Creed 2 yet, so I really can't comment on Creed 3.
You have one up on me. I haven't seen Creed.
Uh, Creed is. Have you seen the original Rocky?
Hmm.
It's basically the original Rocky.
Okay. I've seen
Yeah.
Rockies 1 through 6.
Yeah.
Uh, Screw you calling the last one Rocky Balboa just to confuse people. Although I need to rewatch those. They had a deal at Best Buy for the 6 movie collection for 20, so I picked that
Oh,
up. And
oh wow. Yeah.
so yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. The greatest embarrassment to it is that despite Puss in Boots launching during that polar vortex, it was not able to beat the box office of the Kitty movie.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
but at least it's not Shazam.
just oof. Yeah.
Also, hi, Dr. Mad Studio.
Yeah. Hey, man. Good to see you.
Uh,
I know.
like
Wow.
the like
Yeah. Wow. It is late over there for you. Ooh.
I like your avatar,
Yeah, I do
but
too. Yeah.
well, we'll stay up with you, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so meanwhile, we have a few new entrants in the DEG charts. Uh, Avatar: The Way of Water debuted at #1, which is anybody surprised that it's big on digital after being the biggest movie of last year?
No.
Although what's interesting is that the domestic box office on it is actually is a bit smaller than the one for Top Gun Maverick,
Hmm.
which I think tracks my experience. Which have Daniel, do you personally know anybody who went to go see Avatar 2?
No.
I don't either. Tom over at Midnight's Edge has also said that he doesn't know anybody outside of his review circle who has seen the movie.
Yeah.
So that would be one I would be very fascinated to see what what a breakdown of it region by region is like. Where is the area of strength for Avatar 2?
Yeah. Uh,
Eh, And
and
yes, yes, it was.
yeah.
So Avatar 2 has not really. Uh, Now it would be stupid to say that Avatar 2 was a flop or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the global and national box offices, the original one is still significantly ahead of Avatar 2. So there was some there was pretty significant diminishment of interest over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I think actually I think Avengers Endgame might have passed it for a period of time, and then they re-released it, and now
Yeah,
it's back up to #1.
yeah, re-released it in China, as I recall, during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's actually kind of a Smokey and the Bandit situation almost, where you
Mhm.
captured lightning in a bottle and you're trying to recapture said lightning.
Yeah.
Although it definitely didn't have the box office like it looked like it might have at first.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
Um, there were a few surprises here in the top 20 compared to past weeks. Looks like we have Plane coming in at
Yeah.
#2.
Do you have it pulled up on the screen? Because I'm not seeing it.
Oh,
I'm seeing
okay. So
Shazam.
what happened is I'm sharing my browser window, and I accidentally did that thing where you pull the browser away,
Oh,
and
okay.
um, it pulled it out into a new window.
Oh God, I hate
So
that.
yeah.
I hate it when
Okay,
that
so
happens.
here's the Avatar chart. You can see where Avatar is still significantly ahead of Avatar 2 in the same time frame. And that's
Right.
before we even bring in our inflation adjuster.
Yeah.
So Avatar 1, Plane 2.
Plain.
I seriously wonder like how much that would have made more if it had had an actual title.
Yeah, and of course, having not seen the movie, I don't know what the alternate title would be. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, when your title is shorter than the genres that the numbers suggests for your movie.
yes. Yeah. Uh,
uh, Well, Dr. Matsudio, I don't necessarily know that you missed a whole lot not seeing the Star Wars Celebration this year. Although,
Yeah, yeah,
although there is a part of going to a con where it's just part of soaking in the culture.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so we put a pin in Super Mario. Let's talk about Super Mario as a separate entity because,
Yes.
boy, so we talked about living in bubbles. I
Hmm.
lived in a bubble where I kind of thought that this movie wasn't going to do too great because I saw people complaining about Chris Pratt online. People I knew personally said, maybe I'll watch it on streaming.
Yeah, yeah. I was hearing some of the same things, and but then as it started getting closer and closer to the release, I think a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, well, it looks pretty good," you know. And
I mean, it's a Mario movie. How can we not go
yeah,
see a Mario movie?
yeah, yeah,
So, so let's talk a little bit about this from a box office perspective, and then we can kind of bring up the things that beclowned.
hmm yeah,
There seems to have been this narrative the last since 2020 that, or I should say, expectations have been kind of lowered for the box office almost, and then you have movies that come out that remind people, oh right, it isn't that we have superhero fatigue, is we have bad superhero fatigue.
yeah,
It isn't that there isn't a market for children's animation. It just has to be good children's animation.
yeah, yeah. Which I don't think Disney has figured out either one of those out yet.
No. Now, as far as the overall box office, Mario is actually slightly hard to compare to other movies because it dropped on a Wednesday instead of the typical Thursday night to Friday release.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, Darn you, making more money but making our mathematics difficult. How dare
yeah,
you?
yeah. Okay, come on.
So we are currently looking at a full week of release as of yesterday.
Hmm.
Uh, let's talk about some of the movies it has beclowned. Um, Ant-Man, Quantumania. It is only 20 million behind Ant-Man Quantumania
For
in
one
total
week.
box office.
Yeah,
Which I'll remind you that Ant-Man Quantumania cost, let's see here, 200 million versus
100
100
million.
million for Mario, and has been out for 2 months versus 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also mildly clowned Puss in Boots, but I think honestly part of it was that people didn't necessarily know they wanted Puss in Boots 2, Shrek 6.
Yeah.
I mean, you recall my review at the time. I was like, "Wait, this movie's good?"
Yeah. And hey, Ninja Toe, good to see you.
Yeah. Let's do some more embarrassing comparisons here.
Yeah.
Lightyear.
Oh God.
Stop. He's already dead.
Sorry. Sorry.
Lightyear. Its entire worldwide box office cum came in at 218 million. Super Mario has made more than that nationally in a week.
Yeah. Uh, yes, and Lightyear deserved to fail because it was a terrible movie.
Yes, Daniel actually is our Disney Plus correspondent, as in the guy who keeps subjecting himself to Disney Plus things for some reason.
Yeah, yeah.
Godspeed.
Yes.
um,
Uh,
Go Strange World.
I have not subjected myself to that thing, you know.
Strange World. Worldwide gross total 69 million.
Oof.
So that means that you could add both of these movies together, and Mario Brothers has surpassed them both by a very healthy margin after a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could then further add. Actually, no, you can't quite add Encanto yet. Give it a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. 69?
So you have 69 million.
Yeah.
In fact, let's pull up our calculator here. So it's like, we'll just do round numbers.
Yeah.
69 plus 231 for Encanto plus 218 for Lightyear. Um, we are only 70 million away.
Oh wow. And
Oh, well,
uh, yeah, happy early birthday to you, Mad
yes.
Studio.
And I will say, I thoroughly enjoyed that Dungeons and Dragons movie. They kind of shot themselves in the foot saying stupid things in advance of the launch, so it is worthy of your time.
Yeah, and and oh 30. Oh, well, we've been there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Well, on to other people's foibles
Yeah.
rather than the cruel march of age. Um,
Yes.
so basically, you could take any two Disney animated features from the last couple of years that were actually released to theaters, add them together, and Mario made that in a week.
Yeah.
The-
And don't you know the people in Nintendo are just like, "Whew."
yeah,
this isn't 1993 again.
yeah. 1990, that 1993 Mario movie had some very interesting effects on Nintendo. Um,
Yeah.
uh, where I think that they actually, yeah, they stayed completely away from anything more complicated than maybe a Saturday morning cartoon here and there.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess now Pokemon's different. Pokemon's almost like a subdivision. It isn't like a Miyamoto project.
Yeah.
Actually, do you remember like 5, maybe 10 years ago that there were rumors of Netflix working on a Legend of Zelda movie?
I do remember that. Yeah, and they were talking about gender swapping Link.
Were they? Okay,
Yeah.
that would be typical for a Netflix adaptation.
Yeah.
But but what I heard was that this is how like protective Nintendo is. I heard that those plans got canceled because Netflix talked about them while they were still in development.
Ooh.
I forget where I heard that though, so file that under DB heard that in a live stream somewhere. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Nintendo is notorious for guarding their IPs, so that doesn't
yes,
surprise me.
so good on them.
Yeah.
Uh, and Ninja says that's the power of Mario. That's very true. Like Mario as a concept is like you can just wrap your head around it immediately.
Mhm. Yeah.
That now, what's weird about this is that Mario has entered the culture war because of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah, which it is kind of funny to call it a culture war when it seems like the one side is saying, "Stop preaching to me and just make movies that I could take my kids to and have a
Mhm.
good time."
Yeah.
And the other one is saying, "No."
Yeah.
Um, Now, from everything I've heard about this, and Daniel, I'll be curious to see if you had heard anything about this. That would you say that the Mario movie is like a perfect movie? Like, or from what you've heard about it, because neither
From
of
what
us
I've
have
heard
seen it.
about it, no, I haven't heard that it's perfect. I've heard it's good, not great, and
Yeah, I think this might. So I'm just going to be fully honest here.
mhm,
I've I can't think of a single Illumination movie I've tried to see that I really liked. Back when I was a substitute teacher at a special ed class I was subbing for was showing Despicable Me 2 while the
mhm.
teacher was out, and that was entertaining enough compared to teaching children.
Yeah, yeah. Despicable Me 2 was. I've only seen like the first two of those, and then I've seen Minions, and then I actually recently watched Rise of Gru, which was that one was good. I mean, but yeah, I'm kind of like you. I haven't watched an Illumination movie and felt the way I did like the first time I watched Toy Story.
Yeah, oh, that's right. They also did Sing. Sing was all right.
Sing was all right. Yeah.
Uh, I would say that Illumination is in that category of perfectly adequate kids movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and yeah, hey, good night, man. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. We really appreciate it, Matt Studio.
Yep. Well, hope to see you again next time.
Yeah, but yeah, the other movie that of course the other movie I thought of when I heard that they were doing Mario was Angry Birds because I had seen Angry Birds.
Was that an Illumination movie?
I think it was.
Let's find out because I actually really I think that was a Sony one. Let's find out.
Uh,
Angry Birds movie. That was Columbia Pictures and Rovio Animation. So that was actually yeah, that was Sony.
oh, Sony. Okay.
Which I was gonna have to eat some bird there, as it were, if I was because I actually really enjoyed Angry Birds.
Yeah, I think the first time I watched it, I didn't get it, and then the second time I watched it, I enjoyed it a little bit more.
Yeah, as a Holy Ninja sums that up very nicely. Illumination is a film studio that is fine making good kids movies for better and for worse.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
It is interesting how it seems like Universal has this two-tiered animation system now, where it's
Mhm,
like DreamWorks is coming out with the stuff that's mildly challenging, like your How to Train Your Dragons,
mhm.
um, your Puss in Boots, Last Wishes, and then you have like Illumination making the drivel.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say. Actually, no, a lot of it is drivel. I feel confident saying that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but there's room in this world for both.
Yeah.
And and now where this has gotten culture worry is, of course, the comparison we just made. Hey, Disney seems to have lost the animation crown.
Yeah.
Because I wonder, do they possibly have? Do they possibly have a? Now they didn't have an easy to access 2022 animation comparison, but
Oh, okay.
but uh, but like the big animation movies last year, you had Rise of Gru, Minions, which
Yeah.
also made $1 billion, and
Yeah.
I don't think you had anything else because we've gone over how Encanto about how Lightyear and Strange World completely bombed,
Right.
and even
And then
Encanto was a flop.
yeah, and then when did Seeing Red come out? That came out last year, didn't it?
It did, but it went straight to Disney streaming.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It had like a very limited box office deployment.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's yeah, I think this sort of reminds me of the time in the '80s when Disney was Disney was really struggling, like
Yeah.
'70s and '80s, before Michael Eisner got in there, and at the time, there was a former Disney animator, and some of you will
Oh,
probably know the name, Don Bluth.
yep.
And he left Disney because was getting too corporate for him, and he started his own animation studio, and he was really going at it with Disney. And I think can't remember which movie it was that he did that actually did better than a Disney movie.
I'm gonna it might have been Fievel
Might have been fun.
or
Yeah,
Land Before Time. I know that was like on my constant replay when I was a kid.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, Illumination Films are consistent moneymaker studio for Universal. DreamWorks has more recognizable name. Yeah, that's true. And of course,
Yeah.
DreamWorks that's Spielberg.
Yeah. Also, I should mention that it's not like DreamWorks has been some sort of animation art house. They've come out with a lot of crud for straight to Netflix, like a Boss Baby TV show and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But but they are like the studio that will try. They're experimental,
Hmm.
like things like Rise of the Guardians, for example.
Which I
That
have still not seen yet. I still need to watch that.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Thing I notice is that when I go to SakuraCon, I always see somebody who's cosplaying as Jack Frost from that movie. And I don't know if that's the same person who's been doing it for like a decade or if people just like how that character looks.
I hate to say it. I'm gonna go with the former rather than the
Yeah,
latter.
probably. Although I couldn't tell you,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but anyway, now where this is kind of interesting is that people were raking the critics over the coals for saying this movie is incomprehensible. You have to know Mario to understand it. It's kind of funny, like to hear things like that. Those are objective critiques, but so many people know Mario that this movie is going to make huge amounts of money and be beloved despite those objective flaws.
yeah, yeah. I mean, good lord, my grandparents knew Mario.
Right. Y- Nintendo has had to, for many years, tell people to stop referring to video games generically as a Nintendo out of fear of losing their copyright or their trademark.
Yeah. Yeah.
That almost happened to Kleenex at one point, the people at Kimberly Clark.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I forget what they had to do to keep their trademark, but it was a near thing apparently.
Oh, wow. Uh,
Um, the other thing is that it's not like Mario Brothers is some sort of deep lore thing where
yeah.
uh, uh, where like there is a story to adapt necessarily.
Yeah, I mean it's a plumber who goes to a kingdom and he's of course and I know this isn't the plot of the movie, but in the games he's there to rescue a princess.
Yeah. Apparently, the shift has been that, and this is something I heard pointed out that makes enough sense.
Yeah.
Peach has been a playable character in the various games for long enough that she can't really function as the damsel in distress we're used to from the 80s and 90s games.
Yeah. Yeah.
But everybody loves Luigi,
Yeah.
so make him the damsel.
Yeah. Well, and it makes more sense that Mario would have to rescue his brother rather than just some princess he doesn't know.
Yep. But so yeah, it seems like despite some of the technical flaws, this movie is a roaring success, and good on them.
Yeah.
And I think so. We talked a little about the culture wars. I have seen people say, "Don't be so happy that a movie isn't woke that you just accept mediocrity."
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, but the problem is we've had so many bad movies lately that it's like even a movie that's marginally good, we're like, oh yes, 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 very good,
Please,
yeah,
please,
yeah,
please, please,
yeah,
please.
yes, yes, yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about Sonic the Hedgehog 1. It's
Hmm.
like this is like a very average movie, but average and just kind of harmless fun is like
Yeah,
exemplary almost.
yeah. uh, and yeah, Ninja Toast is Mario is a Saturday morning cartoon series. There will be the occasional deeper story, but in general, it's not meant to be taken seriously,
Yeah.
like Lord of the Rings. Yeah, yeah, that's very true.
Well, like just a perfect example of how non-story driven Mario is. Square Enix and Nintendo teamed up and they made Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo.
I remember that game. Yeah.
Uh, then Nintendo they parted ways on the N64 because the cartridge didn't hold enough memory for Square Enix to do what they wanted to do. So
Mm.
Nintendo developed Mario RPG, not Mario RPG, yeah, Paper Mario as a sequel slash replacement on the N64 in house,
Uh,
and that one was still pretty story based. And then they had the GameCube version of that game,
mm,
which was the Thousand Year Door, I want to say, which was more the same.
uh,
But Nintendo is so allergic to plot and storyline that they have been slowly whittling that away with every subsequent release to the
yeah.
point where the makers of the games had to fight hard. Like this like weirdness of it. They're like, oh, well, that Goomba can't have a name, even if he's in your party. He's just a Goomba. All Goombas are fungible, and they had to argue. Like they had to fight hard to find ways to differentiate even party members who were of the various races of the Mario world. It's like, oh no, this Babam here, he doesn't he lost his wick, and we're calling him Billy because it's not his actual name, but he had his amnesia, so he doesn't remember who he is. So it's a nickname that another character gave him, or something like that. I watched a video about it a while back.
Yeah.
So, so the idea that Nintendo would make a plot or would be at the helm of a plot light, crowd pleaser, simple movie, that's actually arguably a better take on Mario than something with a complex character journey would be.
Yeah, and certainly better than the aforementioned 1993 movie,
Yes.
which which had arguably had a good concept. And I think we talked about that last week. Had a good
Yep.
concept to it, but it had nothing to do with Mario.
It had the fundamental flaw of being called Mario Brothers.
Yes.
But now the other thing that I'll say is that between this and The Last of Us doing gangbusters over on HBO,
Hmm.
begun the age of video game movies has.
Yeah, after sucking for so long. Yeah, and it just says most of the most story moment in a mainstream Mario game is Mario Odyssey that ends with Peach rejecting Mario and Bowser's Persia Bros. I never played Mario Odyssey, so I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it though. But
Yes.
so I think we've discussed this when we discussed the movie itself. I feel like between this Top Gun, even Avatar to an extent,
Hmm.
I think that we are just gonna I think we're gonna see some sort of pivot away from movies that aren't fun being dressed in fun clothes.
Yeah.
And I think I just came up with that phrase there. And I think that's like the biggest thing is that like Encanto. Encanto is a perfectly fine movie. It is exactly what it purports to be on the tin. Like there's not you basically
Hmm.
know it's about the family madrigal. There's family conflict. If you're like me and you're sick of stories where you can use the phrase generational trauma to describe it, you stay away.
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, Ant-Man and the Wasp really being like a movie about Kang and Janet Van Dyne,
Hmm.
from everything I've heard, and just being nonsense. It's like don't pretend to be a superhero movie about Ant-Man. Make the Wasp Quantumania.
Yeah.
Actually Janet wasn't even the Wasp in this one. That was her daughter. Make
Yeah.
it old lady Quantumania.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so again, we keep seeing the clear evidence that if you just make something that people can enjoy,
Yeah.
they will they will break down the door and go to a movie on a Wednesday, which is not a traditional week or movie day.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially non-summer too.
Yeah. Mind you, in April, some schools are on spring break, but still, that's not huge.
Yeah.
And I think it's day one box office bigger than Shazam's first week
Oof,
or first weekend at least.
man.
So yeah, I think it's proof that you just again you make something fun, people will come and pay you money.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe this will be the beginning of the Nintendo Cinematic Universe.
We shall see.
Yes.
Somebody did point out that you could have a Smash Brothers movie as the culmination of that.
Mm.
Speaking of things that, speaking of kind of the opposite strategy of let's just keep doing what we've been doing.
Yes.
Told you I had the perfect picture for this.
Yes.
Good, good. Uh,
Good.
so, so last weekend we had Star Wars Celebration, which happened after our live stream. So, either this was announced on Friday or Thursday. So either it was too late to pivot to and discuss, or it came too late for us to. Well, either way,
Yeah.
right?
Either way. Yeah.
Too late
Yeah.
for us to talk about.
Right. Oh no.
So, uh,
Yeah.
so uh, Disney, for some reason, is continuing to make Star Wars movies, or actually, I should say, they're really serious this time. They're actually going to make these movies they're talking about.
Yeah, yes, we yeah. Kathleen Kennedy said, "Yes, yes, we're serious about making these Star Wars movies. Even the ones that were canceled, they weren't canceled. We're definitely making those movies."
They weren't canceled. They're just indefinitely delayed.
Yes.
So
Uh,
I don't think I care about talking TV shows. Uh, you're our
yeah,
Disney Plus correspondent, and you turned down the request to keep watching Mandalorian.
yeah, and yes, and I'm well aware there are only like 2 episodes left. I don't care what happens in those last 2 episodes. It's just yeah.
Yeah. So let's just focus on the three movies that were announced.
Hmm.
So we'll talk about the most obnoxious one last.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
so movie the first is I believe it was called what, Tales of the Jedi.
Or is
Oh,
that that's the TV show?
there's a movie that's like a no, Tales of the Jedi is the TV show. There's a movie that takes place like the origin of the Jedi, or let's see here, Acolyte and or don't tell me this is just the TV shows. Well, this is just the TV shows. I picked a bad article. One second.
And Ninja Toe, you're going to be waiting a long time for that trailer.
Yeah, that one has actually been formally canceled.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Da, 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 da. Oh, come on. Give me the titles. Okay, so James Mangold is making a movie about the first Jedi to wield the Force at the dawn of the Jedi. So 25,000 years in the past. So James, on the one hand, James Mangold is a good movie maker. I mean, he did give us Logan, as I
Right.
recall.
Yeah. And I've heard good things about Ford versus Ferrari. Of course, he is the director on Indy 5.
Although that project may have been doomed before he got into it. Was it? I forget. I have some half memories of it being development hellish and him getting the director getting swapped.
Yeah,
Uh,
probably. Yeah.
yeah, I
Wouldn't
mean
surprise me.
it's a Star Wars production under
Y-
the Kathleen Kennedy. So it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
statistically somebody got swapped around.
Yeah, yeah. But and he hasn't really been handling the criticism of it very well.
No,
But I mean, so he's going to direct the Space Battle Sharks.
man, that would be cool. Are you talking
Yeah.
about that one race from the Old Republic, the Hammerheads? That would-
Uh, yeah.
that that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
Um, but I mean, of course, this was in lieu of his Boba Fett movie.
which man, that would have been better if he'd gotten to make like a kind of gritty Boba Fett movie instead of that Boba Fett show we got.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, God, even I was talking about that with my mother, and she was like, "Yeah, they completely changed him. You know,
Yeah,
he's
when your mom is noticing.
yeah." Even my mom noticed it. She was yeah. It's just yeah. But yeah. I mean, it could yeah. It's the one he was referring to.
Okay.
Um, I mean it. I don't know. It depends. You know.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it could be good. The worry you have is that they could do an end run, kind of like a Doctor Who in the Timeless Child situation, where they get to now retcon what the Force is, how it works, uh,
Yeah, yeah, and
redefine the light and dark side.
yeah. Maybe get rid of the midi chlorians.
There was one Star Wars novel I read that about Darth Plagueis that actually made the midichlorians kind of cool.
Uh,
I think I preferred, with the explanation I had when I was in junior high, was that's kind of stupid. I'm just going to pretend that it's the opposite, where midichlorians are organisms that are drawn to force sensitive people, so it's an indirect measure.
uh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
so we have our first possibility, which could be intriguing, but it's also when you have a prequel that far in the past. I mean, basically, you know that the Jedi are going to be founded.
Right. Yeah.
So the only tension you can really build is who makes it to the end, and you know, so it won't be the threat isn't will the Jedi be founded? It's who makes it to the end.
Right. Yeah.
All right, number two in order of least to most obnoxious. Dave Filoni is getting to make a movie to tie up the Mandoverse of TV shows, uh, which may also tie up his dangling plot threads from the Clone Wars and Rebels. Because it seems to me that this is going to be, I believe it's Heir to the Empire.
Okay.
So Thrawn,
Not the true heir to the Empire story though.
right? It's Heir to the Empire with probably with Ahsoka and Ezra instead of Luke, Han, and Leia.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think they brought Thrawn back in the last Mandalorian episode. Of course, I don't know why I
Did
didn't watch it.
well, and they also had Thrawn all throughout that Rebels TV show,
Right. Yeah.
which has the downside that he was literally a Saturday morning cartoon villain. So some of the
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can point to some of the things in his past as stupid.
Yeah.
This was also the show that gave us the helicopter lightsaber Sith.
Oh yeah. 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 Jeez. Yeah. I mean, Filoni, he's been kind of stepping in it lately, especially with the Mandalorian.
Yeah,
That the Mandalorian episodes that he's directed have been really hit and miss, mostly miss. Like he did that one in the first season where he's on Tatooine. That's when they meet whatever her name was.
oh,
Um,
the one with like the sniper.
yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
then she gets rescued by Boba Fett, and then
Hmm.
she starts working for Boba Fett.
Whew.
Yeah,
To set up that series.
yeah.
Okay, but it I can't really say I care too much about wrapping up that universe. I watched the one season of Mandalorian and nothing else really.
Mm. I, I I I would be curious to see what happened to Ezra because they definitely left that open ended.
Yeah, and then the most obnoxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last few months have really taught me who has credibility and who doesn't as far as Star Wars leaks.
Yes.
I'm not going to name names on the other side, but basically anybody who is saying, "Oh, definitely they're going to decanonize the sequel trilogy using the world between worlds." Either they got bad information or the source was the voice in their heads.
Yeah. 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 The source was trust me, bro.
And some of these people also were saying, "Oh yeah, season two of Star Trek Discovery was definitely the last."
Yeah. Oh,
And
needed
Kathleen
to.
Kennedy was fired in 2020, as we all know.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Time for the Jedi to become space Catholics.
See, I hadn't actually heard that announcement, but then I saw pictures and asked about it. Okay,
Yeah.
let's break this down.
Okay.
Um, so, on the credible side of the Force, months ago in a podcast, WDW Pro on the Valiant Renegade show was talking about how Disney had been doing focus groups to try to figure out what people liked in Star Wars. And so
Yeah.
they were going to throw together Grogu, aka Baby Yoda,
Mhm.
Chewbacca, R2D2, and Rey Skywalker. And
Oh.
I thought to myself, okay, I could see them thinking about that,
Hmm.
but there's no way they're actually going to do it, right? Right.
Right.
But nope, they had Daisy Ridley up on stage talking about being back in the fold, and she gets to make the Jedi Order that Luke should have made.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Seething in rage, seething in nerd rage.
yes, although it's like, yeah, I already consider your output non-canon, so it's go waste money on your fan fiction as much as you like, man.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
So
Uh,
okay, so Daniel, do you know more about this than me? Like, do you know what this like pictures of Rey pregnant being shown around are?
ah, you know, I
As
don't.
Ninja Cho keeps obliquely referencing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been seeing. I've seen those pictures too, and I wonder if that wasn't some like little short film that they did for Star Wars Celebration to announce the movie, and it was yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been hearing like yeah. Well, she's a Skywalker now because she slept with Force Ghosts.
To quote Han Solo from the one tolerable uh, Disney trilogy movie, that's not how the Force
So,
works.
yeah. Well, yeah, and one theory I've been hearing floating around is that when she and Kylo Ren kissed, and then he fades away, that somehow she got pregnant.
That's not how human biology
Is she-
works. That's not even how. That's not even how the virgin birth worked.
yeah, yeah,
But fun
yeah.
fact: the Immaculate Conception is not actually Jesus. It's supposedly the idea that Mary herself was an Immaculate Conception and was born without original sin in preparation.
Uh,
This is a Catholic concept that I don't have much truck for, but I have to use my words properly.
yeah, yeah. I completely understand. Yeah, yeah. um, yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the deal was with that. And again, like it's she's not carrying on the Skywalker line. She's carrying on the Palpatine line because she's a
Yeah.
Palpatine.
Now I'm going to go ahead and put on my fairness hat.
Okay.
I'll steelman this.
Okay.
In theory, the idea of a union between a Palpatine and a Skywalker slash Solo to like bring balance to things isn't awful.
Hmm.
Just boy, and Daisy Ridley is not the problem.
Yeah.
Like like Daisy is not. Daisy is a fine lady. She's a fine actress. They just had nothing to work with
No.
that character.
No. She was just a well. We all know she's a stand-in for Kathleen Kennedy.
Her ideal British Sona.
Yes. Um, and again, I think not to beat this dead horse, but I mean, we
Hey, Disney brought her back. It's fair game now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, like that trilogy would have been so much better if Finn was the main character instead of Ray.
Yeah. It,
And
it'll be interesting to see if they can bribe John Boyega back.
yeah, I mean, he is force the character was force sensitive. I mean,
Yeah, like the promise that they did anything interesting with Finn would probably be about the only thing that would get me into a theater to watch this movie.
yeah.
And this is like, okay, so a friend of mine actually wants to see Indiana Jones 5. I didn't want to get into the whole like months and years of leaks about it
Yeah.
uh, and everything, but I basically and I didn't. He mentioned people have a bad habit of messaging me on Discord while I'm at work in fast flowing group chats.
Ah, yeah.
So I didn't have a chance to say I will see it with you if on the second weekend if certain rumors are proven to be false,
Ah,
which is kind of my
yeah,
attitude. Like, okay, I will go
yeah,
with somebody to see Indy 5 i- if he is not replaced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge at the end or and erased from the timeline.
yeah. Same here.
Uh,
Um,
much the
yeah,
same way, if I hear, oh yeah, they brought in Finn and he's a Jedi now and he got to be cool and have a character arc, sold.
sold. Yeah. And of course, Ninja Toe says, "I just hope they actually get a competent creative team this time."
About that,
Yeah. Um.
director who is known entirely for directing, is it fair to say woke documentaries or just say political documentaries?
I would say documentaries with with a political slant to them. Yeah.
Yes, political slanty documentaries,
Yeah.
because that worked so well for the Eternals.
Yeah.
And I think they got a writer who was reasonably competent after Damon Lindelof was told to go away and stop talking about it,
Yeah.
because this is apparently that movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. But yeah, I'm. Yeah. It's hard for me to get excited about Star Wars at all right now.
And you've kept up with it way more than I have.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just it the day George Lucas sold the company to Disney, that's when it just it lost its soul.
Yeah, and that does seem to keep happening. That
Hmm.
one story that a friend of mine was telling me is that kind of like he kind of saw this coming with Disney or with Marvel and Star Wars was Disney's complete mismanagement of Power Rangers, because they bought the rights to Power Rangers for their Disney XD cable channel because they needed something for the boys, and then they were kind of unhappy that they kept having to make new seasons because the contracts with Bandai or not with Toei for with Super Sentai seasons, because they were kind of uncomfortable with how violent it was. In which case, why did you buy it in the first place?
Yeah.
I, I feel like Disney is at its very core a very like it's like up until you're 10, they're like you can enjoy Disney very well no matter what you are. But once you
Hmm.
hit like a certain age, they're only interested in you if you're a girl or a woman.
Yeah.
Because like those Disney sitcoms seem to be very focused that way. Um, the the Disney princesses. It's not like I thought you can't enjoy that stuff. Like Tangled was one of my favorite animated movies,
Hmm.
but it's like I was not the target audience for Tangled. I just happened to have enough like the Flynn was or whatever his name was cool.
Yeah. And hey, D Rhino, yeah, yeah, you, Ray
Yeah,
Palpatine.
yeah. I told Daniel before the show, oh, I found the perfect image for this segment,
Yeah.
just to remind people that no, Ray is not a Skywalker.
Yes. Um, yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with it. Yeah, that the way that yeah Disney is, and even with the shows that are more geared towards boys, like it seems like they don't know how to do those, like, or not necessarily know how to do them, but like how to like market them.
Or that they're uncomfortable with them.
Yeah, yeah, it's you get a show like Darkwing Duck or Tailspin. Oh God, what was
Gargoyles. They
Oh
were
yeah,
very
Gargoyles.
uncomfortable with gargoyles,
Oh, it's
frankly.
very yeah, yeah. They didn't know what to do with that show.
Yeah, they accidentally made a story-heavy Ninja Turtles type show, and that was
Yeah,
having conventions a decade after it was canceled, and they let the brand die.
yeah, yeah. And that last season was just god awful.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's weird that they keep buying boys' properties. Like somebody must go, well, we need more boys' properties, and then
yeah,
they try to turn them into girls' properties quite often.
Yeah, or yeah, they uh, make them tamer. Yeah,
Yeah,
they tone them down,
yeah.
and
Disney is not the company for edge.
yeah, yeah. As much as they try to be, it's not.
Well, D Rhino, I would say that the best revenge is
Yes,
would just be to ignore it unless it actually sounds good.
yeah, yeah. I would say so too. And
And
yeah,
a movie starring Ray Palpatine, Grogu, Chewbacca, and R2D2, you're going to need to do something amazing to make me
yeah,
interested.
yeah, yeah. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Um, but yeah, I think we've talked these. I think we've talked this to death.
Yeah, at this point, it's almost more like group therapy. Star Wars Anonymous.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah,
At least we're not. Uh, Disney just seems to be firing on no cylinders lately. Between Mario clowning them, the Marvels trailer where Ms. Marvel's actress was the only person actually who looked like she was having fun being there.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah, kind of there's some dark this kind of a dark time, but also some hope.
Yeah.
Here and there.
Well, let's just say there's a reason I'm full disclosure a Comcast shareholder, not a Disney shareholder.
Yes. There we go. Well, all right. Well, thank you for everybody for tuning in. We appreciate
Yes,
it as
indeed.
always. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell. If you're watching on the replay, leave a comment. And once again, real quick, because I know some people were joining us a little later. Um, the uh, the Angels Awakening Kickstarter campaign will be launching next week on this show, next week's show. So that's the 20th. And if you didn't get Angels Awakening the first couple of times, and or maybe you prefer Kickstarter over Indiegogo, it'll be there. So
Indeed.
yeah. So thank you all again, and we will see you all next week. Good night, everybody.
Keep on trucking.
Yep.